Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal, guys. Thank you so much for your patience. I know we were scheduled to go on at 7 o'clock. I had spoken to Jared earlier today and I asked if we could move it out to 7:30, to which I completely forgot to physically change it, so I apologize for that. And I'm also a little bit late for 7:30 because I was out on location, Danvers, at the, it's actually quite beautiful. But I'm waiting for Murphy to send the link. So, catching my breath here for the time it is. I hope everybody's doing all right tonight, and I guarantee you we're going to have another fantastic show. I always love it when Jared comes on. He's always a wealth of information, and I know he has sent me some things that I'm going to try to, but I didn't. I didn't prepare, and I should have. I thought I was going to be home much earlier. But that being said, let me say hello to those there who are here at the moment. Let's check it out. Who do we have? Wildman, what's going on? Always. William Bridges, what's up, brother? Welcome to a few names. Just kind of skip through some of these. Keep working towards what you're thinking, man. Let me know when you're ready for me to start working, buddy. Who else? Aaron Morrison. Good to see you, love. Yes, hospital. So I also streamed from the state hospital, within the state hospital, that administration building I was a couple hours ago here. So I jumped in around 6 o'clock, halfway through the show, spent a good hour with Rich, Must See Audio, and of course Ollie from Alien Addict. We had a fantastic time talking a little bit about cryptids and mysterious monsters, if you will. But we really very quickly went into David Wilcock and what he's proposing in way of this anti-gravity technology that he's saying he's going to develop. He's bought the hangar. We've seen him stand in it, yell, and talk about the reverberation. To me, that's not necessarily proof of concept, especially when you have such a lofty promise as to say, I'm going to create anti-gravitational technology that we will then apply in way of vehicular traveler, vehicular, I always fuck this one up, vehicular travel. And then not only that, that's supposed to happen within 4 years, we can go out and buy this. Not only that, but he's then going to share the ideas and the principles and the theories behind this technology and what he's been able to prove in the way of certain information. Him well over a year ago to have a conversation like we do here on DHP, but to no avail. Now, this is sort of significant, and I want to mention this very quickly before I go through and continue to say hello to you guys. There are many people in this field, and there are many notable people who hold a certain stature in way of popularity, even given the information they're presenting. They're very left field, and maybe that's what they're known for because they can still back certain things up. I won't mention any names. I'm sure you guys on your own could come up with a handful that are what we would call the unattainables. Now, this is kind of silly and reminds me of being in high school and seeing that very gorgeous group of cheerleaders that had their own airs and walls about them, and we'd say those are the unattainables. And they were, for the reason that they gave the impression that you could never get to know them. Well, that's sort of how I feel about some of these bigger players who certainly could make the time to talk to not only myself, but Rich from Goof On, or Blake and Brent from Third Phase of Moon during a panel, or Alien Addict, you name it. They could be talking to any one of us because we do have relevance in the field, and we do ask the correct questions, and there are people who absolutely love listening to the answers to what we are asking, especially when it comes to these names, and there are questions that nobody is openly asking them for fear of possibly reprisal or being ignored. Are we going too far? Well, that's the whole idea. We need to go too far. And I was talking to Alien Addict and Rich a little bit about this, Must See as well. I'd like to have Anjali on the show at some point. Although I know people have their own opinions, there's always a right-brained interpretation to certain things. And in this case, with her claim that there is a cave that possibly harbors some sort of extraterrestrial or terrestrial species of humans, it's very curious how she knows this, if she's been there for sure, where this cave is. I mean, God, we can start any one of those places, any one of those benchmarks, to see what happens next in way of response. Larry Hart, what's up, brother? Welcome to the show. Let's see who else. Coral Ann, good to see you. Thank you for being here as always. My rock, she doesn't even know it, but she and Cashew Gesundheit are some of the best moderators on the internet. Forget about here with our channels, on the internet, guys. All right, let's see here. Thanks again for sticking with us. Eoteria Cryptids, what's up? Welcome to the show. Good to see you. And who else? I haven't forgotten anybody. Oh, Elena. Can't forget Elena. Elena, wonderful to see you, love. Thank you for being here. Randall Hill, good to see you, mate. Welcome to the show. Alex Oyen under the veil. What's up, brother? Can't wait to get together with you. We're going to be doing an overnight or at least a nighttime excursion out into Alex's property and the woods surrounding his property, wherein he's had these certain experiences. Now, as you guys have seen in the mini documentary that he and I put together, he has certainly experienced something out there. Now, I know there are many people who have questions as to what that is, but we cannot deny that he's experiencing something that we can't readily explain, and with incredible fervor, too, from the part of whatever is actually enacting these experiences upon him. So, to me, there's certainly something more in the way of research there. We can't look at one person and say, okay, they have a body of evidence, and maybe I don't agree with the way that was captured, so we're going to dismiss that person. Not that that's my thought with Alex, but I have heard other people suggest these sort of things, and not just in the way of his evidence, but others as well. Keep in mind, the most difficult thing to do in this field is to rationalize and make something tangible that is irrational and untangible in its nature. So with that in mind, we are all up against an incredible mountain when it comes to trying to put forth physical evidence that you can hold in your hand, make it repeatable, and observe it in the scientific way. I commend everybody who's trying to do that. And a very notable individual was somebody who came on Rich's show last night by the name of, what was it? Cal Croft, I think it was. And he was speaking about Michael Horn. And I'm not going to go too much into that because he really was thorough with what he had presented. And, whether you know Michael Horn or not, this information that he's presenting is very influential and something certainly to look into, not necessarily to jump into as a totality, because we all have to do our own research, but something certainly to entertain as we move forward. Oh my goodness. Hey, Alex Oyen under the veil, mate, you didn't have to do that, but I really appreciate your donations, man. Thank you so much. I'm putting it in my tank to come see you, by the way. What you've given me last show and this show, I'm putting in my tank to come see you, brother. He's not too far away from me, but he's about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, whatever the case may be. And you know what? It costs money to travel. It costs money to create these just to get out on location. And I appreciate each and every one of you who super chat or go to PayPal, and I don't think I have the link in the description, but super chats are great, guys. Thank you so much. I'm not going to make Jared wait any longer. I just noticed that he's in there. Dan Halbert, what's going on, brother? Thank you for coming to the show. Kingfish Kebab, welcome back, mate. Let's see, who else? I missed too many people here. Caleb Benjamin, nice to see you, mate. Lorraine Lamore, oh, I like that. It rolls right off the tongue. Don't tell that to everyone. You might get dirty looks. Brian Yates, what's up, brother? Nice to see you. Hailing here from the Northeast. And Lunar Sparkles, wreaking havoc. Brandy Phillips, my God, we got a lot here, but guys, we have to get going. Ian Mysef, nice to see you. Toby Gilliland, nice to see you, brother. Sorry about that. Chris, good to see you, mate. And without further ado, as Rich loves to say, I present to you one Jared Murphy. Jared, what's up, my friend? Good to see you. Damn, you look good, bro. You look good.
Thanks. Yeah, the scorched earth of the open air of the Grand Canyon.
No, you got some real color there, and the lighting that you have just really brings it out, buddy. You look like you're ready for a photo shoot.
Thanks. Really, just let's see all the internet things right now. Smash my like buttons and
please
join my channel.
Oh my God, what's going on, man? Good to see you, brother.
Hey, it's really good to see you. It's great to catch up, and So great for everybody to join us. Thank you. And it's great. Like you said, that super chat. It's this stuff, going these places and doing these things. It's not free. And if we didn't have viewers like you guys out there, then we would not be doing this.
That's true. You guys do
Well,
help us and enable us to do some more of this work as we go. We're not here, begging for donations or anything like that, but
no.
we do appreciate and recognize when people are generous in that way because they do believe in what we're doing. And to us, that means the world.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to do it. It's every way that, just subscribing to Not Aliens and Dark Hour and, just participating and actually having an interest in the subject is really important because it is really a search and rescue. It is our history. It is our future.
100%, man. And you couldn't say that any better because we're going to get into some things tonight that are very important in way of implication for what may come next for us as a species, and perhaps what we're going to do revisiting history and maybe even rewriting it in certain ways. But before we do that, I want to say, Elena, thank you so much. She says $10 super chat towards the travels. And you know what? I'm serious. That's what it goes towards. I can't tell you how much we've spent on this. Anyway, doesn't matter. But thank you very much, Elena. And now, I know I'm saying it wrong, so you can go ahead and correct me. Elena Ianao. Thank you so much. William Bridges, back with another $10 super chat for the cause. He says, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you guys wholeheartedly. Really. Thank you so much, guys, for your generosity. All right, so let's get into this a little bit here, Jared. So my understanding is that you went out to the Grand Canyon very recently. I think you returned no less than a week or so ago. And
Man,
you were doing this as a preliminary expedition into something that comes next. Could you explain a little bit about what your plan is going forward and why you were out there just recently?
Yeah, so we got on a kick. So I guest on this show. I, of course, host Not Aliens, and then I'm on Everything Imaginable. And a few months ago, prior to our trip to Stonehenge, Gary and I, there's a few things that are hanging out there that everyone who is a fan of our real past and the stories that and the news stories we hang on is one of them is the G.E. Kincaid cave, and it just bugs me that okay, we know the mile marker where it's at, we know where it generally is, so why hasn't anyone gone back to look for it? And so I work with climbers, I climb, and it would not be when you're setting up something like this to go into what, according to G.E. Kincaid, described was a cave 2,000 feet off the canyon floor, 1,500 feet down, and that he found mummies of either Oriental or Egyptian wares, and there was statues, there was multiple mummies, and there was an entrance to a cavernous city underground. So it seems like a pretty interesting find that was written about in a couple articles in 1909, 1908. There was 2 articles, and so we decided to go back. And along that travel, the long story here is almost done. Rex from Leak Project, he and I have been doing other interviews about just Not Aliens, or just about the book, the YouTube and the Rockfin channel and my website. And we got into ancient megalithic history and everything else. And then off air, it was, hey, I'm going back to the Grand Canyon. I'm looking for this G.E. Kincaid cave. And then I mentioned all the people that I had heard about, and I had seen Scott Walter go to the rim. I had seen basically there was a lineup of anthropologists, archaeologists, and people that I wanted to get a hold of. And it turned out that Rex was already talking to half of them. And so we just combined forces and we met out at the canyon with one of his Navajo Nation friends who I can't thank enough, Chandel. He was awesome. Also a vet, did a couple tours in Iraq. I mean, just super interesting guy. And the 3 of us went out on the Navajo side with his guidance to where the exact mile markers are for where this alleged cave is that people have been talking about forever. And we started looking at how can we get down there? How can we locate it? Well, of course, we have some pretty high-res camera equipment. And for all of those listening, there's going to be an obvious question about airplane technology. I'm going to leave it with, we had really long selfie sticks. And we also had We had a Nikon 1000, I think it's a P1000 or an N1000. So this is a telephoto lens. This camera can see. We were shooting almost 2.5 miles away,
Mm-hmm.
and you could see things as big as small as a rock, like in detail,
Mm-hmm.
almost 3 miles away. It was
That's incredible.
it was stunning what we could shoot with this camera. So that camera's in 4K. Some of our other camera equipment was in 6K. And I can tell you right now, depending on whatever you chose to pull, no one has seen this footage unless you've been on the river. And now, at this point in the river, you've been going for 5 to 7 days on a camping trip and you have a permit. So there's
Oh
no
wow.
way you're at this point at these. There's a particular set of rapids, and there's no way you're not at this point if you haven't already been on the river for a very long time. You can drive out to it, but we're an hour and a half from a gas station, and we're across some really rugged road for over an hour.
Well, let me ask you this before you go on. How much stock do you put into something that cavernous that it could actually perhaps encompass some sort of humanoid species? Even though there have been reports of this, in the early 19th, 20th century, I should say. Um, are we chasing a notion, or do you think that this could actually be it's purported to be?
So it's so interesting. You and I both talked about it, and we looked into it, and then collectively, I looked up a lot of information. And what I found, this might be a whole nother program, but whether you want to call it manifestation or like intentional blockages by some other conspiracy method, but I'm sitting in Tuba, which is a Navajo Nation land, and it's within an hour of where we're going. And we spent a lot of our time in Tuba. And I'm looking things up that for the last 3 months to prep for just this expedition, which was 4 days in the field. So it was a week trip, and it took a lot of planning to make it happen.
Hmm.
But we get out there, and I'm seeing articles show up on my as I'm researching that I've never seen that are completely applicable, completely necessary. And I'm like, I've been looking into this for months. And why is it that I'm seeing this information for the very first time? And it's a whole nother rabbit hole, but I can tell you that there is, and I'm saying this to answer your question because it's such a punchline to get out there and find out that there's 150 miles of canyon caves that you have to hike into the side valleys, and you have to climb to get to most of them. And this man, by paleo anthropologist who runs Carlsbad, who literally said there's more caves in the Grand Canyon than there is Carlsbad, and we thought that Carlsbad had the most caves. I guess that was the theory. And then that doesn't mean size or length, or there's a million different ways to categorize this, but there's a lot of caves in Carlsbad. The Grand Canyon, turns out that they have been really seriously at it since the 60s, and they've only explored 150, if you want to call it, lineal miles.
Hmm.
And of that, here I am reading an article in Tuba City at an espresso shop, and Mead's article comes up as an interview in this Arizona newspaper very, very recently, in the last few weeks, months. And he said, yeah, there's at least 120 miles that no one's looked at.
Oh
And
wow.
of the canyon caves that they've found, I'm going to give you an example of one cave. One of them, and they said they explored it, but that doesn't really say they've really explored the whole thing. It
Hmm.
has 40 miles in it.
In the cave it's 40 miles down
40
or in.
miles of slithering of
Wow.
passages.
Yeah.
So that's just one cave. It has 40 miles, and there are many, 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 many caves from what they've already looked at. And then piled on top of it, we have modern uranium mining after the 40s. It turns out, unfortunately, that currently, as we speak right now, there are 500 open permits to mine uranium in and very close to just the Grand Canyon.
Hmm.
And during the 50s and 60s, a significant amount of uranium, which you only get a few pounds for tens of thousands of tailings. So things I didn't know, the Page, Arizona has a lake in it, Powell. Lake Powell is very famous. It's not too far from Antelope Canyon. It's also near the Horseshoe Bend that everybody likes to go take photos at. The thing about it that was really fascinating is Lake Powell makes up the drinking water for quite a bit of that area, and that that whole concern of part of Arizona, and there is declared 39,000 tons at a minimum of uranium tailings in the bottom of Lake Powell, and that so the mind-blowing stuff that I know this sounds crazy for those of you sitting out there who've been wanting to know about the GK cave. We're getting to it, but there's a number of things that are so significant about Arizona in general that I've learned, and I'm not trying to become an eco warrior here, but the reality is that there was money allotted, $500 million for indigenous peoples, for not just Navajo but all the indigenous peoples in the area. They had allotted over $500 million to clean up a lot of what were within the government's, in quotes, rights during the 50s and 60s, and they just didn't have safe and the best practices in collecting the uranium, and a lot of people breathed that dust, and it's still there, and it hasn't been cleaned up, and the money, although allotted, has not actually been given. So I just want to put a light on that, because this is about the search and rescue of our history. As you go back for the past, we want to find cool technology, ancient high technology, connect the dots, give us some mental peace and or resolution with our past, and also those crazy cool technologies that might connect back to our genetic technologies. But then in this search, we also come up with how it runs right into the present. And in this particular case, I was shocked to find that there were 500 open uranium mining permits. Just now, there are legislators in Arizona and other places actively trying to shut that process down. But there's even a uranium tailing pit off of the Colorado River just in Utah. It's right off the river as it's going into the canyon. I mean, it's right there, just a few hundred feet off, and it's a big pool of radioactive, crappy
Well,
dust.
that's absolutely significant, and we'll talk about maybe the water quality out that way as a result of this being the case.
Yeah.
One question I did hear when I was talking about your endeavors was, how is he doing this if there are a lot of Native American lands out there? Does he have the blessing of any of the tribes
Right.
that are there? So, can you tell us a little bit about how that might work?
Yeah, so we went out with, our guide was Navajo, and there are lots of guides in the area that do all sorts of tours. And by tours, I mean private. I don't mean you get on a bus with a bunch of people. I mean you do. There are many. I got to meet there's a great couple guys that are at the dinosaur footprints in Tuba, but they also do guides for, like, I ask more questions than some people. And so one of the things I found out is, here's this massive field of dinosaur tracks, but he's like, yeah, but I guide people around here. There's Anasazi bones and graves and buildings right up on that bluff over there. And
Wow.
he's 17 generation Navajo. I'll just say his name is Alvin. And you can hire these guides and you can go a lot of really cool places. So on one hand, plan a trip out to Arizona, but I would 100% recommend contacting different guides directly. And now that we're talking about it, I should probably put his info up on my site on notaliens.com so that people can, if they want to go, you definitely want to go. If you're just going to go look at something, you're going to want to have, I'm definitely 100% no money behind it, but just steering everyone towards local indigenous guides. You're going to get more insight, more info. I mean, there's a whole show we get to do. I sent you the video already. Did you catch that thing on Bigfoot?
Is this within the Dropbox that you sent?
Yeah.
Because I didn't get that. I just pulled it up on my other computer because I was going to transfer this on so we could watch it, and I don't have the email. So
Yeah,
we'll
don't
talk
worry about
about that, I
it.
guess. Okay. All right.
But what's exciting for people is that so we were there. Rex has a really good friend, like I just mentioned, Chandel, who is Navajo. He lives in the area, and we weren't going to do this without someone from the nation, inviting us out to do it. And
Right.
and here's the thing: we weren't doing anything other than looking. Although we would still want that welcome, and we want to support. We ate and stayed in Tuba for, I think, basically three of the majority of the trip we were there. It was mostly in Tuba, and we supported the locals. And it's really important that you do that. And as far as the work that's done in the canyon, it's very interesting. It's like, yes, the majority of the canyon is indigenous and it's controlled. Well, it's supposed to be controlled by just a couple tribes of sorts, but the issue is like these mining permits, the and then there's all the guided tours, down in the river. It's public, so there's a lot of entities that are involved in anything that has to do with the canyon. Here's something that I would have thought would have been easy to figure out. A couple things that really gave me a migraine. One was if you want to hike into the canyon, you could take day and overnight hike for way quicker permitting than you can on some of those lottery style trips where you're doing the bucket list of camping down the canyon for a couple weeks, in the Colorado for a few, 100 something miles, 200 miles. But you can also, I had no idea until I was on the ground that you could get in a kayak for $130 and you can go around Horseshoe Bend. Now, this is not the right area. Like I said, if you're where we were standing and did our research, you would have had to have been on the river for 5 to 7 days to get there via boat. Not a motorboat, but most people, they do it in those rafts and they do canoes, and the kayaking part is done way down near the Navajo Bridge, where apparently it got pointed out to me that that's where Natural Born Killer's wedding sequence was.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So we ended up, above the exact location where the Kincaid Cave was, but we weren't doing any excavation. We're not doing any. There's no permitting work. There's no evasive work being done. So we would be doing that. We wouldn't be doing that without the locals' help, and we wouldn't be doing it without their blessing. And so none of our trip was designed outside of having local business, local help, and local people that were within the nation available and with their help. There's no way you don't exclude that. It's just bizarre.
That's
How
what I
people,
figured too. I mean, I thought it was an appropriate question, excuse me, whenever it came up, because, you would need that blessing. And of course, if you're going to go explore anywhere, I mean, you would like to have the indigenous, residents. If they go
yeah.
further back in way of culture, that's even better. But very quickly, Paranormal Awakening asked if you allow questions. Yes, we do. Just put them in capital letters. I happened to glance over the chat and I saw this one, but put them in capital letters and we will get right to we'll put them up on the screen, and Jared will go through as he needs to. Paranormal Awakening says, could permits and requirements be hiding paranormal action within the canyon? So I think what they're asking is, for these permits and requirements, could this sort of be a mask or some sort of stonewall for some people to hide something more esoteric happening within that location? What are your thoughts?
Well, so what I'm shocked about is legit paleoanthropological and anthropological and just general archaeological and any kind of geological, just fill in the blank of anyone who'd be interested in going in a cave. It is not easy to get into the canyon. They are making the permit process complex to the point where even from what I'm reading, the anthropologists are complaining because there is a wealth of information within the canyon caves. They preserve bodies. Like I read an article about a sloth. It was 10,000 to 40,000 years in existence. They estimated, and they're finding them dead in some of the caves at certain levels.
Hmm.
Animals from bats, birds to horses are dying and leaving footprints that are from any sort of biology interest. I mean, they're being preserved down to skin and muscle, and there's just all sorts of information that, although it's mummifying or various states of decomposition, we're talking about stuff in there for tens of thousands and more years. There's even a culture in the canyon that's known of called the stick people, and they only know them by the stick people because they've gone in so many caves where the cave entrances are marked by literally stick people. They're little people, and they don't even know who they were. The local indigenous tribes have no name for them. They're that old, and
Are
they
these actual? They're human beings, right? They're just something
yes,
within the
they just
evolutionary
call them the
chain.
stick people.
Okay, is that maybe because of how they lived using a lot of sticks, or did they have a thin frame? Do you
No,
know where the
it's
moniker came from?
It's literally, yeah, it's literally they made little tiny stick people, and they would leave them in the caves. And right now, some of
Huh.
the theories arrange that maybe the stick people were facing directions to point, like maybe we were going in the cave or maybe we're out of the cave, but like in use. But these stick people are carbon dated at a minimum to be at least 3,000 years old, and
Wow.
they don't know who they are. They have the little stick figurines. They come in various sizes. They're left in various caves. But what I found really interesting is that they've only seriously been looking at these caves since 1860 or 1969, and of those 150 miles, even if you physically set foot and said there's 40 miles of cave or 40 miles in this one cave, for anyone to say that they've actually like scanned it or totally analyzed it, it's not like there are active teams of hundreds of geologists and anthropologists looking. So first and foremost, it's the logistics of being a climber or a splunker or both, to get into the canyon physically to the location that you have to carry gear to get into these caves. I want people to start getting their heads around the actual monumental logistics, because there are heat. To give you an idea, until September 1st, before we went, we were fully aware that if we did get permits, and if in some crazy way we're able to attach ourselves to one of these already existing groups,
Hmm.
just to walk down the switchbacks to hike into the canyon is a few hour deal, and they recommend that you be done by 10 a.m. So you're talking about a
Wow.
so it's a straight 3,500 foot drop, but to switch back down the trail to get in, you're talking more like maybe you're looking at a full 2.5, 3.5 hours to descend, um,
See,
and you got to have
go
your
ahead.
water with you.
Yeah. Well,
So that's a
that
problem.
brings this one question to mind. And I mean, you're talking about this in detail. I've had my thoughts on how you might be doing this. How dangerous is what you're doing in the way of splunking these caves in the Grand Canyon? Is this something that the amateur climber could possibly undertake, or do you have to have the expertise? I mean, in setting your lines and your notches, and you're going down, creating a path, and then of course, as I understand, cave diving is relatively safe, especially in explored caves, even though it gets pretty claustrophobic. By and large, there's only been one recorded accidental death within a cave, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it wasn't too long ago. So, again, how safe is what you're doing?
So the thing with climbing is that the first statement you make when you're in the climbing gym here in the Twin Cities, to new people renting, is climbing is inherently dangerous. The irony is that climbing's most dangerous when you're bouldering, which is when you don't have a rope
Mm,
on, you feel safe because you see the ground, but you end up 20 feet off the ground. And we've been witness to in groups to people literally rolling on their ankle and breaking it right through the skin. Like just that's the dumbest way to get hurt climbing. And then outside, when you're traditional climbing, trad climbing, when you take a whipper, when you fall, when you swing, you fall down. But sometimes if you're on a pitch and you fall and you swing into a wall, I mean, you could easily shatter an elbow, shatter
sure.
a heel, you could shatter a leg, you could, you wear helmets and everything, but that can happen. The difference with what we're doing, though, is that you're not, so it's a deceptive thing. Climbing in general, you're trying to there's so many climbers out there, they're trying to make a route complicated. Like maybe a lot of people have heard of free solo, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, where you're like trying to take a complex route that's been rated and difficult. When you're trying to get to these places for exploration, I'm not going to say you're taking the fun out of it. It's still fun. The danger level is mitigated because you're going to belay, you're going to be on a rope, you're going to be top belaying or belaying from below, and you're either going to be someone's either going to descend from where you're at. You're going to have multiple tie-offs, so you have triple redundancy in the rope, how you anchor it. You have
Mm-hmm.
triple redundancy with in a group and climbing with gear and going to a place where you're trying to create a safe descent or ascent. You're not doing it to make a complex, fun sporting route like for the Olympics. You're trying to do something that is safe and say, okay, well, if I was just climbing for the day, I would be trying to use all the muscles in my hands and fingers and trying to figure out this
Mm-hmm.
route and where to drop a leg. What you're doing instead is you have other gear, like think more military, where it's like, hey, we want to throw, like in a movie where somebody wants to throw a hook on the top of a bluff, movie style, and then you have like mechanics that are like pulling you up or down. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also, when you talk about amateur, it's not that you can't be an amateur and do this. It's you have to have the endurance to manage like 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet with maybe 40 to 80 pounds of gear, and then that's with a rack. And so it's all about how you're setting up the routes, not for pleasure, but for just, we're going to create a safe descent. We want to descend 1,500 feet. So it means that we have to do so many safety ties. So the reality is you mitigate most of the danger. Things fail. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is to have the most highest point of your rope. And there are accident reports for climbers. So if you want to really geek out about climbing, there is an accident report where it's like someone died or someone was injured, and then you read like why, and all the time it's because somebody's rushing or they use a knot that's not as safe. The techniques that are being employed now on standard climbing are so safe that, and the ropes are rated to over 4,000 pounds. So the rope that you're on is also rated for force, kilonewtons, and you have to have flex in the rope, and it has to be an all-weather rope, and you have to have it not cut on the side of the rock, and you might multi-pit there. The technical specking of getting someone up or down is maybe putting people to sleep right now, but I will.
Well, no, I mean this. No, that's really interesting and I think thorough in many ways. And before I ask you this next question, I just want to acknowledge Aaron Morrison with a $10 super sticker.
Nice, I saw that. Very nice.
The guests
The
going when they're on a roll. Thank you very much for that support, Aaron. I appreciate it. Is there any concern in your mind about either getting stuck in one of these caves that are unexplored or even getting lost within? I mean, that's, I think my biggest
Yeah,
fear in going into caves is taking a wrong turn and then just, I mean, I think of the Paris catacombs.
yeah.
Concerns about that? And if you do, what kind of precautions would you take to make sure you made it back out of something so extensive underground?
I think the hardest, and this will all circle back for everyone talking about paranormal and like why is it so difficult to get permits. Um, but the splunking part of it and the climbing part of it, this isn't like two or three people going. I have a group of just really great friends that are very experienced route setters. They're very brilliant. They're very strong, and it's not just physically. It's to set up routes and to create safe passage within splunking environments. There's different safety protocols. Oxygen becomes an issue, monoxides, other gases can be built up that are poisonous or lack oxygen, and either way you end up dead or passed out. So you really can't, it is really not a safe thing to go exploring alone in some of these
Mm-hmm.
environments. And so the group that this initial expedition was three, four technically, but it was three where we're doing heavy, we're going across really rough terrain with the right vehicles, with the right equipment to get really, really, really up close footage to find at least an initial like starting point of saying, okay, what does the rock look like? What are we going to do to get to these spaces? And then the group that's coming, the daisy chain of everyone involved would stop us. Like you said, like just being that person who's going to Jules Verne it down an extra tunnel and end up at the center of the earth, bad idea. It's like there's no like
Yeah.
run ahead. You know, there's like
No,
we didn't
that's
see him, but we heard a little like cowbell going.
so we knew he was down. See that again? That scares the hell out of me. I mean, I'm claustrophobic as it is. I mean, I think it's something I'm going to be working on shortly here because there are two cave systems that I plan on entering very shortly. So I mean, that's going to
All
be
right.
something to conquer and grit my teeth and go into that quiet space, whatever the hell it takes. But Area 503, thank you so much for the $5.03 super chat. He says splunking, climbing, and scuba diving have a lot in common. Slow and precise,
Oh yeah.
steady and meticulous, safety first. He couldn't be more correct about that.
Yeah, and it's important to mitigate the dangers, and then don't rush.
If you do find, and let's just throw this out there, let's say you do find a cave that has some sort of deep opening into an environment that you're not familiar with. Let's say that, and maybe there are species of insects or small animals that you're noticing and aren't terribly familiar. And maybe let's say that there's even something beyond that. You find structures deep within the earth that are obviously artificially made. What are you guys going to do in way of presenting that information? Will you be allowed to put out the extent of what you find, or is there going to be some mitigating circumstance that keeps you from revealing the truth about your expedition?
So, first, there is a lot of anthropologists and work being done in the canyon where a lot of the cave systems are kept private because in the 70s there was a cave that they basically give it an equivalent of a natural history museum worth of mummified creatures for thousands of years, and it was advertised where it was, what it was. Other people, just general public, found it. They went up there to camp, and anyway, they ended up burning the cave and burning it to the point unintentionally that most of the genetic information was lost. So ever since then, the secrecy around the Grand Canyon, this ties in that very first question, a lot of it is it's kept within university or within the crowd that does the research in the canyon. It's kept within those circles because they don't want general idiots and or adventurers to go and find them. On the day we got back, our search and rescue crew was looking for a European man. And by the way, I don't know the follow-up to this because this was just like 4 days after I got back on Labor Day. They went looking for a guy that got lost. They found a guy that had been missing for 7 years, and no, he wasn't alive. So to give you an idea about, people do hike into the canyon. They don't respect like the water, the climate, but the caves are kept generally under wraps because they just don't want people going to them as a general activity, which is, there's a lot to be said about that because, for instance, if more people were going, maybe more caves would be discovered. And it's pretty clear that there was no standards when, every other gold, or from the gold rush on, that people were looking for minerals, that there weren't prospectors in the Grand Canyon creating holes and looking for valuable minerals that could be something that could be mined. And ultimately in the 50s and 60s, a lot of the mining in the Grand Canyon were uranium. And so now we could find something. So like we and I know everyone's dying. We'll get to the rapids part where the G.E. Kincaid cave is, and there's still that 120 miles of unexplored areas. But in order to explore it, it's not what G.E. Kincaid described was float down the river. I looked up, I kind of saw something that's discolored. The entire canyon's discolored. Everything's discolored. There are layers of red, browns. I mean, there's like, it's a khaki, rainbow of different minerals and oxides. Oxidations have taken place. There's a million different chemical processes between all the different layers of everything that's built up to make the canyon. So there is like nothing consistent. I mean, yes, the geological layers are consistent, but the bleeds that Kincaid described, that's not what you're doing. You're not going up the river and going, look, I see a hole. That's not what's going on. The caves that these other splunkers, these other anthropologists and geologists and the people that are working in the canyon now, the way they're finding some of them is, well, you could use a really expensive thermal drone at night. That's one way. But then they're actually hiking into those side canyons. And those side canyons have walls that are hundreds and thousands of feet tall too. So you're not just able to go up the river. You have to go up the river and go, how much information do we have about this side canyon? Okay, let's go
Mm-hmm.
walking. And then you literally, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, most of it was, well, um, we saw something Kincaid style, but from hiking for miles and being in the canyon for you're not coming out. If you're doing something like that, you're carrying supplies or having supplies brought to you over the course of over a week. You know, you're not going down there for just a couple days. You're going to be in the canyon for maybe a month. And so that being said, to find the caves, we have new technology now. You know, we have thermal imaging, thermal drones. So there's a color differential at night between the outside and the inside, the cool area of the caves. So suspected cave areas could be located that way. We had a $10,000 thermal device offered to us for our next trip, but for this trip, it was try to locate the existing cave. But we would share the info. I mean, the short answer is, of course, we're going to put it out on Dark Hour. We'll put it out on Not Aliens and Everything Imaginable and Cosmic Salon, and we will put it out on my Rockfin channel and on a little bit on YouTube. Not as probably as much, but the idea would be to share it with everyone, get their eyes on it. It's exciting because the people sponsoring our shows and supporting these our channels is what's making all this stuff happen. So we're going to expose it to as many people that we can do it reasonably without. If we find something that is of significance, we need to be careful about how what anthropologists, archaeologists. I mean, fortunately, my co-author on our next few books, she's an archaeologist, but we have to involve the right people to systematically step through. If we did find anything, how to do it with the best preservation in mind, not to
Right.
not touch it, but yeah, but to then, if it turned into an archaeological site, one could argue that, well, every cave is an archaeological. Yeah, no, but if we find mummies and if we find cave paintings and if we find stick people and if we find lots of mummified sloths and 80,000-year-old, 40,000-year-old dead things, then we're going to want to stay away from it. We're going to want to leave everything in situation, in where in leave let sleeping dogs lie, right? And
Well,
then
I understand.
come back.
Well, I understand exactly what you're saying. Way legitimate archaeological site where there's much to be studied. You don't want to touch anything or have people coming through, trampling down or moving things about, coming in as tourists, of course. But you're not concerned with whatever you may find. Let's say it's something very significant in the way of changing history, let's say. So you're not concerned that you would be censored or accosted at some point, asked to forfeit what you have found, or ask you to be quiet. You're not concerned about anything like that, correct?
No, because the unstoppable momentum of this research, you can't unmemorize it. The issue is the more people we bring it to, the more people who have eyes on it, the more people who
Right.
know it. It's getting the deluge. We've talked too much already about. We haven't talked too much, but there's such an avalanche of information of our history is not what's been told. It is so obvious. There are more TV shows and more podcasts and there's more alternative truth in the facts than the facts that they table to just support theories that aren't true. And
Right.
so if they wanted to bury one, there really just isn't anything. What the conspiracy really that is right in front of everyone's eyes, that hidden in plain sight, is the uranium. I am all for the United States government doing whatever they got to do, or whatever they're doing for uranium purposes. That's their business / our business / national defense. So I can't argue with that. I do have a problem with you don't clean up the work, and now local people of every breadth, size, and age are breathing uranium dust. That's a problem. But
Oh yeah.
There are then mines and locations and things that are mostly government subcontracted to. It's not that fancy, it's just government subcontracted mining companies are in charge of getting these resources for the United States. And so the reality is that that's a huge national priority. It's never going to go away. And therefore, the Grand Canyon's between two military bases. We actually had Apache helicopters fly over us, near us. I mean, we know they could see us, and we zoomed in on them with the Nikon, and
Mm-hmm.
there is definitely activity in the canyon. So for everyone listening, keep your eyes open for some basic facts of there are there are people there just doing the work they need, but in daylight hours to find any mineral of value for the United States government. And in this case, it's uranium. And although they've platted it pretty well, there's still 500 active permits right now.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's a lot of activity in a way. And we weren't there to interfere with that. No one should be. But at the same time, there's these problems with the collection of the uranium in the past. And whatever they're doing now leads to what looks like super suspicious activity that we're going to equate to alien subterranean lizard people. And the reality is it's United States government going for a nuclear weapon for the umpteenth time, or but yeah, right. So we could do a lot of stuff by drone. By the way, you have to
Oh
help me
yeah.
out.
That's a. Yep. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, Michael. If you got
Yeah.
any other, I just looked down. So I'm talking to you guys, but I have to look down to see the screen because I didn't prop it up high
Okay.
enough. So
No,
I
that's
have to
that's
look
fine. I was
down.
waiting for you to. Yeah, to hiatus from the conversation for a moment. Lorraine Lamour sounds so regal. Lorraine Lamour,
Yeah,
could you have food and supplies carried in by drones in the Grand Canyon?
yeah. People get pretty serious about if you've ever done any like the Boundary Waters are here in Minnesota. A lot of people get serious enough where they got an 80-pound front pack and or a 60-pound front, 80-pound back or more, and just to do like 2, 3, 4 weeks to not hike in twice. They'll do they'll just do mega packs, and so you get really creative with how you carry supplies in, or you create a base camp and then you bring supplies
Okay.
to the base camp, and then you daisy chain it in. Of course, drones can carry people now, and there's all sorts of fun stuff with that. However, that activity is not authorized in the Grand Canyon, which is
One would
why,
figure.
um, right, which is whatever. But it's interesting that some of these caves they've set up as bat habitats, which, okay, that's fine. But for a while they said it was endangered. Well, there are no endangered bats in the Grand Canyon. So there's a list of things that you could immediately, it would really quickly get you down the, oh my gosh, it's paranormal, or it's aliens, or it's underground subterranean peoples, not humans. But the truth is that there is a lot of different government agencies, mineralogists, a lot of universities trying to keep their caves under wraps while they study. Like I just read an aquifer report about where does this aquifer in the Grand Canyon go? What is it? What kind of water? There's like a lot of people doing a lot of work, yet at the same time, there's this published opinion recently from Mr. Mead that he's been at it since 1969, and it's getting impossible to get approved permits, and that is a question I have as to what the issue is,
Hmm.
because you still have this 120 miles of basically unexplored, and then at the same time you have all the missing information from the existing cave systems, and then uh, yes, there are two military bases, so you're going to see military craft, period. But then we have stories from indigenous people like Alvin in the Navajo Nation where they're seeing cigar shaped UFOs land. He's seen Sasquatch footprints. And this is the home of the Anasazi. I mean, there is a lot of weird stuff about Arizona in general. The Montezuma's Castle has nothing to do with
Yes.
Montezuma. But, those are things that which I did stop at. And I'll get you photos, but the area is just very, very, very uh, heavily just. We think of it very desert like, but there is definitely a lot of trees. Flagstaff. There's definitely a lot of mountains that are green, and at the same time, you land in Phoenix and you got cactus, and then you get into Tuba and we're in desert, and Grand Canyon, it is all desert, but it wasn't always that way. And so there's a variety of layers of information there, probably in the dust, that we just have to start looking at. But the cave
Is it
itself, I don't know what, where do we go?
is it still accurate to say that, as we explored America's Stonehenge together, we're looking at topsoil that's essentially it's soil. So it's
Yeah.
soft, maybe it's pressed in a bit, but we kind of talked about an inch equaling 100 years that has gone by. Is that still applicable on other terrains, such as a rocky topography, such as the Grand Canyon?
I think it's experienced a lot of different climate changes, and it depends on the section of the canyon. It depends on I mean, there are some very large geological obvious points in the layers that you can see, and they've done some core sampling, and there's definitely it's a huge. The geography of the Grand Canyon goes back 1.6. I mean, okay, it's 1.6 billion years.
Shit.
So it's theoretical creation. One of the main theories right now is that it ended up the way it looks because of Pangea, and
Mm-hmm.
so it relates back to that. But then, the weathering, you have the young. First off, so we rewind quick. We have the Younger Dryas, 12,600 plus years ago, give or take. We have Mount Toba going off 75,000 years ago. We have various meteors and celestial impacts, just even that we know of in the last few 100,000 years. And then we have that massive mystery 19-mile wide diameter impact point in Greenland. The
Mm-hmm.
diameter that is, what do we got? Have you or your team? While
Yeah,
at
he says,
work.
Brian Yates, he says, have you or your team members seen anything you can't explain while at the work site? I assume that he's asking this about the Grand Canyon.
So, one of the days we were on government land that is open to the public, actually, but you have to have a vehicle that's going to work on that land. And we parked my car at the Navajo Bridge. And when we get back, it's not, I mean, my car was there, but there were three dudes, 20s to 30s. I've never seen three dudes on their phones leaning on the vehicle, none of them talking to each other, and all of them looking at us. Now, they were parked at one point in the parking lot. It's not a huge lot, but they were about, they weren't close enough to really define their faces. I could tell you their ethnic background, but it was white dudes in collared shirts. That's what I could tell
What
you.
color were the shirts? What were they? Multicolored shirts amongst them, or was
No, they looked like
anything unifying?
they looked like they were going to go to a country club and you
Okay.
know, have a drink and then go golf, but they were in jeans, and they were standing around their car, and they're all leaning on top of their car, and they're all texting. It's like I've never seen three dudes do that. They're all three of them are on their phones leaning, but they're all like this. They're all looking towards.
But see, if
They're
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 looking
they're
at
like,
you,
yeah.
yeah.
So we got back, and they so it wouldn't have been so obvious, except for the fact that, like, okay, are they just texting each of their loved ones? It's like, hey, we reached this point, we're just texting home quick, uh,
And there's a hand.
right? And then yeah. So then we load all my gear back into my SUV, and which was an SUV, but not a real off-roader like Rex. But then I get in my car, and then I'm gonna Rex and I are, we're gonna follow each other out a lot. It's 9 o'clock at night. It's really dark, and it was dark, and so the minute we go to leave, the three guys scramble in their car to follow us out.
Hmm.
So Rex pulls over, I pull over in the lot, and we make those people leave uh, without us going first. But those dudes weren't going to go anywhere until we did. And we didn't see anyone else while we were out. uh, in the field, but why are there these three dudes here? And then you got to wonder, does it have to do with military stuff, or is it actually mining interests? Is it actually like, hey, are these guys
Mm.
reporters out looking for uranium news, or about like you know Aaron Brockovich stuff?
Right, exactly, exactly. Now that's, I mean, it's incredibly curious to, recall that. It would be even more of interest if you go back and you see these three guys somewhere again. Then we really have a story to work with. Um,
Yeah.
my question next here is, many people, they go to the Grand Canyon during the day. I don't know if this is something that people can actually visit at night. Obviously, you're not going to be climbing at night most times, right? But as you've been there at both times, okay, during the day and in the evening when the sun is set, do you notice any sort of discernible difference when it comes to the energy of the canyon as night falls?
We live streamed a couple times on Leak Project, and I tried live streaming myself. I mean, we had like, none of us could believe we had any reception, but
Yeah, I couldn't either. You did all right for that, really.
thanks. The and we mentioned it during the live streams. People have been to the canyon. It's such an undescribable place. It's a difficult thing to share with people. There aren't photos that do it justice. There isn't. I mean, there are really great photos, great photographers. I like some of the photos I took, but they're not the sensations you have going on inside you as you
Hmm.
are there. It's just, whatever your God side is, whatever your power side is, whatever your universal contact, connect, download switch, whatever really doesn't just make you, it's not about making you feel small or big. It is a connection to something that's in you that is really, there's no words for it when you're standing there. Uh, the juxtaposition of not just your eyes cannot process the depth or the distance.
That's what
And
I would think too. Yeah.
yeah, it, but there's a sensation that starts at is very metaphysical, and it's not about just something. It's not about. I'm not saying that it can't be. I'm just saying it's not. I'm not describing this for the sake of prayer. I'm describing this, or for the sake specifically of meditation. I'm saying there is a rhythm and a beat that everyone has in their personal connection to the universe that is very uh, happy once you're in these spaces. There's everything's a little more, it's not about it being just overwhelmingly uh, awe-striking. It's that whatever your questions are of the day, like why did I buy powdered sugar donuts and not chocolate today? I mean, whatever is on your mind, there's a clarifier energy going on. So it it tunes. It's like standing there helps tune every thought and emotion you have going on collectively. Does that make
That's
sense?
curious. That's really curious, dude. It's not like you, yeah, it's not like you step into any other space and this is what you start feeling. And I have to admit, when I was up there in the Hollywood Hills and I was standing out, just under the sign, and I'm looking at the absolute immensity of the view that I have and the ocean just, beyond that scope, but you can still tell it's there. It's absolutely amazing and it is indescribable to try to explain what that feeling is like. You really sort of get that sense of open.
Yeah. I don't know if I lost you.
There he is. Stupid
All
internet.
right.
Anyway, yeah. So as I was saying, I don't know where I cut off, but long story
California
short,
sign.
when you're thank you. When you're underneath the Hollywood sign, I'm looking out over this expansive view, and you really get this sense of openness, and it's a reflection within yourself. Now, I can say that because I've noticed that many times that I'm standing on a precipice like that where you're just looking out for miles. But to really get that experience, you have to visit this sort of place. And yes, there is a healing energy that is just inherent within the land. And if you're going somewhere like the Grand Canyon, which has its own energy based on the structure of that particular location, you might be standing in a portal for all you know, and receiving some sort of healing energy, or at least your vibration is raising to a point where it's completely different than when you walked out of the car to step onto that soil.
Yeah, there's a lot going on because then you have your energy, you have the people you're with. Um, there's not there's not just one sensation of one, it's not just one stream of consciousness. It's the lighting, the sunsets, the rise. It's significant. All of it
Yeah,
is
well, I
very
mean,
significant.
all these locations, were revered, I should say, by the indigenous people, and they were using it in very spiritual ways. So they were connecting with not only the land itself, the earth, but they were connecting with the spirits that in Massachusetts, it's actually the name translates to loosely to the place where spirits dwell. And there are good ones, there are bad ones in way of preference, but these indigenous people knew how to use those energies and use them in a synergistic fashion that they weren't only taking from, these beings, but they were giving back in a certain spiritual or energetic way, which is obviously something we have lost by and large as a population. Um, do you think in your next expedition, because you're going back there, obviously, what is it, in October?
Well, it looks like not announced yet officially, but it looks like
Okay.
Leak Project might be holding a conference, and I will be guest speaking mid-October.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
so that's
Okay.
coming up, possibly. Rex hasn't sent the final details, but I would be speaking there, and then I think either that I think given the timing right now, probably post that we would be wanting to go back. But we have a challenge in front of us, and this is going to be something that we'll want to go over with everybody. I don't know
Hmm.
if do you want to show people the footage?
I don't have the email, or I don't have the invitation to the Dropbox. It wasn't in my email, so I have no access to it, unfortunately.
Oh, it was the same one we
That's
used
what I
for
was checking.
Stonehenge.
Oh, is
Oh,
it? Oh, so that must be in the emails. I thought I was getting a separate email. I apologize. It'll take me some time to go through to
oh,
find
okay.
that. What
So,
I can something for you though, but it'll have to be post this show.
oh yeah, well, sorry, folks. We will do another show. Uh, over communicate. That's what we should do. Um, but yeah, I just put it in the same Dropbox. I just
It's
created
sorry.
folders and yeah. Okay, so this is us
I don't know
doing
what
the
I'm doing with
off.
Dropbox.
This is the off show. Quite frankly, and I'm not going to say it. Off. This is off show talk. This is pre show. I think it's called pre show talk or prep, but we're not there yet. Um, this is you. This is like you guys are getting bonus behind the scenes also. So
Yeah,
um,
DHP fucking it all up. Yep.
yeah, that's what's up. The the so the Dropbox is same dark hour folder and yeah. So for everyone listening, I will describe if you want. We could talk a little bit about what we found. Do you want to do that without the photos, or do you want to
Please.
wait and hold it, do another show?
Um, no, you can talk a little bit about it, and then we'll bring up the photos next round just
The
as
photos
we go
the
forward with those.
the photos are really spectacular. They really are spectacular. I think you guys all are really going to enjoy it. I want to get those up for you to take a look because there is, from what we saw in the daylights and going out there multiple days and doing very, very detailed camera work in the area, the exact mile markers where the Kincaid Cave is supposed to be, we are not seeing an opening in
Hmm.
any capacity. Now, do we need a thermal drone? I mean, a thermal camera with a selfie stick? Yes. Um, could that would help? But in the exact location of the rapids, exactly where um, it's supposed to be, there's no opening. Now, It doesn't mean that the opening hasn't been collapsed, that it hasn't has a temperature differential that a thermal imaging uh, camera would be able to locate. But for now, based on everything that we can find, specifically the set of rapids where it's supposed to be is very
Hmm.
specific. There's even a camping site. So for anyone who's been to the canyon and actually has done this multiple day camping trip, it is, yeah, super sticker.
Thank you, Elena. Yeah, now you're right. It is a little Greek for me, but you can correct me. I'll get it right. I'll try. I'll do it. Hey,
I
thank you for
think
your
she's
$5 super sticker.
I think she's just enjoying you not knowing how to say it.
Maybe, and that's okay too. It's
Alina,
entertainment.
Alana,
Me
Alana.
trying yeah, twisting the tongue and Jesus Christ, I used to rap too, so I mean this is pretty embarrassing. But anyway, Elena,
Wow.
thank you so much for your $5 super sticker. Well, I gave you those instrumentals. You know what I mean? So there you go.
Oh, yeah. So,
Oh, by the
yes.
way, I wanted to mention that, guys. Go ahead and check out the latest upload from Jared on not his YouTube channel, Not Aliens, and he created a trailer and then he put a small episode on the end, and it is absolutely fantastic. So well put together, so informative. I watched the entire thing and I wanted to watch more. So I definitely recommend
Oh,
you guys
thanks.
go
I'm
and
so
check that
sorry.
out. Yeah, that's
So
all.
now nobody knows. Nobody knows this. I'm going to say that it had. Okay. I'm going to say that I was going to put out that documentary that weekend. That weekend that it was supposed to come out, I ended up out of town, indisposed on the Superior, Lake Superior, and
Hmm.
therefore I did not put it out. So pending this weekend, I should be able to have out that documentary. And I'm glad I didn't put it out because I was given some insight over the weekend, and I'm sadly having to, well, to my benefit, I'm going to be redoing the section of this documentary. So it's actually going to get a bump in time, and it's also going to have some new info in it that it was just there was no way I shouldn't include it, and it really was the
Hmm.
final. Because I had internet access, and I'm like, man, I could still get this out, and then I got this really brilliant info, and I'm like, wow, I should really redo and add on at the beginning, and I'm
Is
like,
this a full
oh.
length or a mini doc that you'll be presenting?
No, it's about 45 minutes.
So close to a full length then. Yeah, that's full
Yeah,
length
so
actually. It is full length.
I'm looking forward to putting that out for everyone. That spoiler has a lot of good info in it, and of course, to the very most important capstone of that spoiler, my intro music has been brought to you by our host, truly, I guess, Dark
That is
Hour.
true. Yeah, Jared did use some of the music that I had given him to work to do, and he chose a very good song. If you guys like the intro that you didn't hear tonight, I usually play it on Dark Hour Paranormal. I also wrote that as well back in my hip hop days, and of course I could still do it again. But there are certain restrictions we have on sampling since 2005, which have kind of put things on the back burner in that respect. But nonetheless, he did a very good job putting this together. You guys ought to go and check this out. Certainly subscribe to him and give him the thumbs up. Helps the algorithms. Leave a comment. Either way, you love it, you hate it. Just leave a comment. Let us know, your thoughts on all of that. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome,
I
man.
really appreciate it, though, man. Those were great.
Oh, my pleasure, dude. I mean, it was so well done. I can't honestly say enough good things about it. I kind of looked at it and made my toes curl. I said, shit, I need to do something more. So, oh,
Well,
fantastic
the,
job, mate.
thanks. And the thing is, I'm still going to be doing something extensively. I'll be doing another documentary on the Grand Canyon and a lot of this info, but more detailed. And I think it's worth looking at because one of my greatest frustrations in looking up stuff on the canyon is that there's a lot of great info, but it's really splattered in a way where how you cannot. I feel like I've gotten really good at locating things quickly through searches, and none of this was self-evident. None of this came together
Hmm.
quickly. It was really hours and hours of like, well, I apparently read the same thing 8,000 times and there's nothing new. And then I get on the trip and this avalanche of like, how come this search never revealed this? Or how come this site didn't have that? And why is it that I'm getting all these relevant articles about caves and, oh, by the way, people disappearing in the canyon? And then I mean, they rescued someone 2 days before I left because they went in on a
Jesus.
day pass and they got lost on a day pass. They got lost hiking into the canyon. And like I said, there's heat warnings until September 1st, where if you're hiking after 10 a.m., you better have like 10 gallons of water because the temperatures are so extreme that between 10 and 3, you could really be hurt or die in those temperatures. And so you really have to confine hiking to the mornings or the afternoons or be in a really wet, cold cave where you'd be thrilled, right? But the I do want to make it clear for those of you, this wasn't like a huge reveal. The location of the Kincaid Cave, exactly as described, from what we can see, isn't there. Now, it doesn't mean that it couldn't be somewhere else or that it was misinformation. But
Hmm.
your all the ideas around thermal imaging, which would reveal a cave opening even if it had been collapsed, unless it was collapsed significantly. But that aside, there is other reasons to go back. So coming mid late October, the plan is to find a space. I can't bring out literally a couple thousand pounds of gear and a few expert, really brilliant climbers and have everybody, mind you, those super stickers, I cannot explain enough that subscribing, joining, like not aliens, I have not aliens, you can join for very little now annually. And then it's like, I don't know, it's like $40 for a year. Um, but you could do monthly. But either way, it's all money towards these activities. But the people who are coming on these expeditions and doing this work, quite frankly, very much like a lot of university people, they're doing it for free. They might have
Yep.
a partial budget.
Yep.
Every dollar counts so much. And then at the same time, when we get out there, I can't not know where this cave is. And I have some, now this makes sense from our show because if Michael, I can tell everyone right now, if Michael saw some of the images that we were going to show you guys, he would have been going, "Oh my god!" I mean,
Oh, I'm going to be
because we
looking at them after the fact, believe me.
so we did locate another cave. It's very big, very interesting looking. We're curious about it. It's overlooking a couple compasses that were pecked into stone and a sun with
Hmm.
the rays off of it, and it was very, very, very old and weathered. And that was on one of the points that we stopped at. That was one of the places close to where we were being observed. Not while we were on the canyon, but when we were back at the bridge at the cars where we were being watched. There was definitely a lot of interesting things around the space that we stopped. We did find a dead cow too. There's
Oh,
that.
wow.
It
No
was
kidding.
there was nothing left but the skin. The interior had been completely eaten out. Um,
I believe it.
yeah, so we have that stuff. Then Rex had radiation detection equipment, so we did check to see if it was maybe if it was a UFO sci-fi experiment, if they did something with the cow. But
Yeah.
it just probably just dropped dead, and who knows? But that was on that same portion of the trip. But the imaging that we did come up with, including the petroglyphs and the cave opening that we did photo with the Nikon, which was over, it's got to have been closer to almost 2 miles away. That's all very interesting, and the 6K footage that you guys are going to see, no one has that. I mean, if you've done the river raft trip or the canoe trip or the camping thing, maybe you've taken some high res images from the canyon floor. Uh, it's called the Quagunt, or it's KWAGUNT Rapids, and that's exactly
Quadrant
at the mile
Rapids.
marker. That's about, but so somewhere between we're in Marble Canyon. You guys can Google it or Google Earth it, and Marble Canyon. You're between mile marker 57 and 60, and you're somewhere over either before or after those rapids. Technically, you're supposed to be after, but the bottom line is this area, uh, again, from within the canyon, you might have some cool photos. but I'm pretty sure nobody has the photos that we're going to show people the next time. They're worth looking at because the structure of the canyon is so unique and interesting, and I mean it's amazing. And when you see it in 6K and 4K, and the stuff we were looking at, that's
6K. Ha! It's
yeah.
awesome.
Ooh, Aaron, super stickers or
Thank you so
super
much,
stickers.
Aaron Morrison, for the three. Very quickly here, only because we have the next show coming on at
Yep.
9:05. But before we do, I know that we've talked about where we can find you, but go ahead and reiterate that for everybody, where they can find you and see your work, because you have a lot coming up, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Look, so please go ahead and subscribe on YouTube at Not Aliens. It's Not Aliens. And then on Rockfin, I'm going to start putting out some free content, but Rockfin's a subscription service, but that I'm also on Rockfin. And of course, notaliens.com. The options there are you get a lot more member material, a lot more of my raw research. I'm trying to put more out for people to just participate as I go. At the same time, it's a way to support me and to continue this search and rescue. So, and of course, all the podcasts I try to make links to for Dark Hour, Everything Imaginable, my Not Aliens interviews, and Cosmic Salon. So you're going to see you can hear me on all these shows.
Absolutely. And
Plus
guys,
documentaries.
because we were a little pressed for time this evening. Hey, Montauk is strange. What's going on, brother? That's fine. Go ahead and play it through on the archive there. You won't be disappointed. We had a fantastic show tonight. Jared has only introduced the tip of what he's starting to work on, and of course we will certainly have a follow-up show. I've seen many people talking about that within the chat, asking for it as well. And I always have a great time with you here, Jared. Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this and sharing with us this incredible undertaking that you have decided to do in way of the Grand Canyon and archaeology that may impact the history that we already think we understand.
Yeah, thank you so much, and for everyone listening and watching, please continue.
Stick around,
You're right.
guys, because you never know what comes next. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment, share with your friends. If you enjoyed this, share this with somebody, and share Jared's work over there if you're enjoying that as well. I assume you will if you like what we do here. So once again, thank you very much, Jared. And guys, thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to take you off for just a moment, Jared, and we'll close out the show quickly. But thank you once again, my friend.
Yep.
A man of few words, and yet not really. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. We are going to end the broadcast now because Rich from GoofOn is on in 3 minutes, 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Go ahead and hop over to GoofOn. I'll see you there as well. He had a fantastic show last night talking about Michael Horn, Billy Meyer, Frapsat. Our friend Robert Rivas was on there along with Cal. I always mess this up. Cal Croft, I think it was. Jesus, I'm probably butchering this too. But at any rate, go and check that out, and we'll see you over at GoofOn. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. Until next time, do something. Still working on that outro. I had it very quickly. For those of you still listening, let me know what your thoughts are on the documentaries I've been doing lately. I don't want to substitute it for interviews, but I'm curious what you guys would prefer in certain respects so that I can kind of look at what I have and appropriately working on. So just to get an idea, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Let me know what you enjoy, and we'll work off that. Guys, thank you so much for being here tonight. We'll see you next time.